listening to Proof Text, a Glossa House podcast by Dr. T. Michael W. Halcomb, Dr. Frederick J. Long, Dr. Mario Melendez, Dr. Jennifer Noonan, and J. M. Smith. Welcome and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to Proof Text. I'm Michael Halcomb, and in this episode, we are doing a Hebrew Growcabulary, episode. We're looking at the Hebrew word kara, Kof Resh Aleph, kara. And kara, or you can just say kara, you don't have to do the trill with the R. Kara is a lot easier. Kara means essentially to call, sometimes to read. And when we think about this word, it actually can go a little bit deeper than that. So in the Torah, when we think about kara, we really can think about calling, right? This in Torah, God calls kara upon individuals like Abraham, Moses. And when he does, the word kara is used. It's not like a shout out from God. It's a divine summons, right? It signifies a higher purpose call, if you will. Then there's the concept of reading. Reading, of course, isn't just recognizing some letters on a page, fitting together. It's about understanding, internalizing, and then living out those words. So you could say that when one karas, when one reads the scriptures, they are answering a kara, a call from God. So calling, reading, when you think about Exodus, there's this passage where Moses is telling Pharaoh about the festival that the Israelites want to celebrate in the wilderness. And the exact words that are used are, we will go with our young and old, we will go with our sons and daughters, for we must hold a festival to the Lord. And the word for hold a festival here is actually natug, and it means to celebrate. But some ancient texts actually use nakara instead, which means we will be called. So that's kind of interesting. It shifts the perspective or the meaning a little bit. Instead of the Israelites just initiating the celebration, they're actually responding to a divine call, which instigates the celebration. So that's kind of fascinating to think about. Also in the book of Isaiah, the prophet writes, "The Lord called me before I was born. While I was in my mother's womb, he named me." And a lot of you probably know that one. But there, kara intertwines both the act of calling and the act of naming. And it's emphasizing, right, the divine purpose and identity of the prophet. And so, if you go to like a synagogue today, a modern synagogue, and hear Torah read, there's this ritual called an aliyah, and the person being honored goes up to the Torah and reads. But they're not just reading, right? They're answering a kara, a call to connect with their heritage, their history, God's purpose. And so kara, when you look at it, cross-biblical Hebrew, has some different layers of meaning. So we want to look at this. Just what I'll do here, if you're watching along, I'm going to share the screen. We'll look at stepbible.org, and we'll look at some Hebrew briefly. I'm going to set my keyboard to Hebrew. If you're just listening, that's okay too. But if you're watching, the Hebrew's up on the screen. Got my keyboard set to Hebrew, and I'm going to type in kara. There we go, and you'll be able to see what comes up. We have kara 752 times, the verbal form to call or to call to. We also have 138. It can mean encounter or meet. And there's that one kera, to read. And by the way, you have kore, which means partridge. So it's just different pointing, but the same letters. Consonants and vowel letters. So let's look at this to call. We see the first reference there in Genesis 1:5. Vayikra alehem la'or yom v'lachashech kra leila vayehi arev vayehi boker yom achad. right? So, and this is essentially what the Lord's doing on day one. And the Lord called the day light, and in the darkness he called night. So there you have a naming going on with calling. And you got Vayikra in Genesis 1:8 as well, in Genesis 1:10. You get the pair again, Vayikra Alehim, and then Kra Yamim. So it's all over the place. And you need to really get familiar with this form Vayikra. And in Genesis, you see it a lot, Vayikra Yahweh or Adonai Alehim. Right? Vayikra Yahweh Alehim. Al Ha'adam Vayomer Lo Aika. So very interesting stuff. This is all over. Again, it appears over 700 times in Scripture. So it's all over. We click that, you can see in our lexicon here, our mini lexicon, that you have various meanings, a variety of meanings: to call out, recite, read, cry out, proclaim, to utter a loud sound, to call unto, to call to proclaim, to read aloud, read to oneself, read, summon, invite, so on and so forth. But it always has to do with calling in some way, shape, or form. So that's kara. And I will stop there and say I hope that helps.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.